once you're in these strategies and you're managing money, like, do I know if the other guy has the same crypto exposure? Does the risk manager talk down, or am I just like doing my thing and they're sizing me?
In general, they're part of the idea is to emphasize idiosyncratic alpha, and so part of the way that you do that is by not having, let's say, community thinking about certain exposures, because what you're trying to do is sort of extract the unique genius of that individual manager or that pod. So very different, for instance, where I came from, which was one portfolio, one strategy, one aggregate strategy built up of many underlying strategies. But that's there's an interesting trade-off there, because the trade-off there is between a circumstance where if you have idea sharing, prospectively other people in other positions might benefit from the idea sharing, right? They might not be thinking about certain aspects of what's going on. They might not know as many things. There's all sorts of reasons why idea sharing in general is good in terms of intellectual development. But the challenge with it is that it leads to groupthink in one form or another. And so that's kind of in a lot of ways, what they're trying to do is just kind of isolate the individual managers, kind of think about them as individual folks. Now, I mean, who knows? Do the people call each other and, have a chat? Yeah, I'm sure it happens, but it's not, it's certainly not organizationally designed the way that, many big, particularly macro funds, multi-asset macro funds might operate.
I'm picturing you sitting there yelling at the pod shop manager, and nobody puts Bobby in the corner. And what about on the pyramid there? The capital allocation process then. So I have these two managers, I'm keeping them separate. They're both putting up giant numbers. How do I think about reallocating from one to the other? How's that work?
Well, I think one of the challenges that the pod shop dynamics face on an ongoing basis is the fact that it's very rare for high ratio strategies to be persistent, particularly like outsized high ratio strategies. And so a big part of the strategy is how do you go through a process of allocating capital between them as efficiently and quickly as possible. And so in a lot of ways, what is happening with that capital allocation is you can almost think about it like very short-term alpha trend following. So they see a manager, they're generating good returns on a short-term basis. Various people have discussed this publicly, risk managers and capital allocators. They'll say, if I see a good manager on a 6-month alpha time frame generate uniquely good returns, then I want to start to shift capital there. But if it goes for beyond, but the reality is the information value is really only present in let's say a 12-month time frame. Meaning, like, whatever, if I can understand the 12-month alpha, I have a pretty good sense as to how to allocate for, the next day and the next day and the next day. But that gives me no information value on the probability that manager will perform well a year later, 2 years later, over the next 5 years. None of that matters. So it's a very, very tactical allocation. It's a reason why part of the risk management strategy is to knock out managers very, very quickly in terms of those that are performing in a negative way or not holding up to the same standard, basically eliminating them from the portfolio once their alpha momentum starts to fade. So that's why you hear these sort of tight stops, like a 2% drawdown on a 6% target fund, or target strategy, they basically knock you out. Whereas like a traditional macro manager might need to see a strategy, move 2 or 3 standard deviations out of expectations over a several year time frame before they believe that it wouldn't, it doesn't make sense to allocate capital to it.